Greetings, welcome to another episode of the Citizen Digital. As always, your host Mpoki Thompson. An exciting episode today. We're at Vodacom Tanzania, the head office here in Dar es Salaam. We'll be having a discussion, a conversation with the managing director of the telco company, Mr. Philippe Simi. Philippe, welcome to Mwananchi Digital. Welcome to the Citizen. It's an exciting time for the telco industry, and you're at the helm of one of the leading companies in the country. Can you first and foremost tell us who is Philippe Simi for anyone who would want to know you?
Great, thank you very much. Well, you said it. I am the managing director of Vodacom Tanzania. My name is Philippe Simi. Prior to joining Tanzania, let me actually take a step back. I recently joined. I got here towards the end of October last year, so it's just about 4 months since I got here. Prior to joining Vodacom Tanzania, I was with the MTN group in various African countries for very long. But the last 4.5 years or thereabouts, I was with MTN South Africa, where I was the chief officer for sales, distribution, regional operations, and device management. So yes, I have, like I said, done more than 15 years with the MTN group. In different countries, Uganda, Swaziland, Zambia, South Sudan, and then most recently South Africa. So, I'm married, I've got 2 children. My son is 14, my daughter is 12. Actually, my son is 14 today. Yeah, it's his birthday today, 27th of February. So yeah, and yeah, definitely excited to be here.
Perfect. So as you mentioned, you have vast experience within the telco industry, but what is of interest is that you are coming to Vodacom Tanzania from a different company entirely, MTN, even though it's within the same industry. Can you tell us the moment you found out that you were coming now to head the Tanzanian division, how did it feel like? And also moving from MTN to Vodacom, can you just tell us a bit of insights on that experience?
Yeah, I think with every change, you have anxiety, excitement. You are confronting the unknown. Like in my instance, I've spent the majority of my career, with a different organization, grown through the ranks. So I did understand that company in and out, right? And now at this age and at this level of experience, jumping ship. So it's almost, I say that it doesn't matter whether you're going into a new job as straight out of university, or if you're going into a new job with so many years of experience, day one is day one, right? So that had a level of anxiety about it. But at the same time, for me, it was exciting because Tanzania did present an amazing opportunity for me in terms of the job to be done here. Yes. We are at a very critical time whereby this business can actually, grow immensely. Yes. We are at a time where the government is very deliberate and intentional towards supporting businesses, private business. We are at a time where the world generally is very pro-digital, and being at the forefront of that and being in a company that gives me a chance and an opportunity to lead that transformation in Tanzania is important. Also, most importantly, we are the champions of financial inclusion here in Tanzania. And again, that's another unique opportunity. So for me, being in the midst of all that was quite exciting. And when the call came, I could not hesitate to be here.
Is it something that you had anticipated? I mean, now you've come back to East Africa, working in Tanzania. Is it something that you had envisioned? Had you worked in Tanzania before?
No, I'd never worked here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this your first time in Tanzania?
Yes. Not as a visitor before, yes, okay, but not to work here.
Okay.
So
how long did it take you to prepare? Did you have to study? Did you send the team over? Did you even come prior to your appointment just to study the environment? And have you already settled in? Because it's been 4 months.
There's parts I won't answer with regards to did I come here or not. Just know I was prepared. I was prepared for the once I got the opportunity,
Yes.
I had to prepare, and preparation at various levels. Obviously, I read about the country, I speak to a number of people about the country. My predecessor has been gracious, or was very gracious, Sito, to actually also give me, context to understand where the business was at various angles, who does what, where, when, what does the country, what do I need to know externally, in other words, external to the company outside. So that all these things helped me prepare for this opportunity. But at the same time, getting here and finding a very, very talented team of individuals just made it easier for me. I've not had to really struggle with much in terms of getting into the country and adjusting. The team's been very supportive. Hilda Wujiku, who's our finance director, was acting MD. She was very helpful in terms of the transition, helped me sort of settle in quite fast. The broader team is very equally talented and very, very good at what they do. So it helps us in that regard, because I don't have the disadvantage of getting in and sort of battling to get things going, right? There is a good momentum, there is a very good know-how, a very good support system indeed, and externally as well. My stakeholder engagements have really been positive, welcoming people, be it senior government officials and other officials, very eager to engage, listening. So it's that's made it quite, I won't say easy, but very pleasant landing for me.
Yeah, now to add on to that, we understand that anyone who's given the mandate to head a company like Vodacom Tanzania, which is a key player in the country's economy overall, there's usually a lot of scrutiny. You're always on the spotlight, and fortunately or unfortunately, in the past, we've experienced where some of the heads of this telco company have been more so on the headlines compared to others. Now, I'm quite sure you were made aware of that. Did that put any sort of pressure on you? And I would want us to get into the bit of some of the opportunities, some of the early challenges that you've noticed, and how you plan to embark on all this.
Yeah, look, a role of this magnitude does come with, has its pros and cons, right? And you always have to take it in equal measure. But at the same time, it's important to focus on the job to be done, right? On what you need to be to do. I think there's an overly used reference of play the ball and not the player, which is keep your eyes on the job to be done. For me, that's the most important thing, and minimize distractions. There's always going to be distractions at any level, but it's actually having that awareness that those are distractions. So a very important aspect for me in a job like this is self-awareness, because that helps me actually to realize that over and above being the MD, or over and beyond being the MD of this organization, I am human, and I'm susceptible to those to those curveballs, if I may call it that. So the scrutiny will always be there when it comes to this job, right? And I need to be mindful of that and lead responsibly, but also make sure that I in so doing, that I am putting the organization first at all times. Outside of this, I'm also always mindful of the fact that I'm a family person, I'm a family man. So I wouldn't want this job to get into the family sort of space and make it uncomfortable for the family. So
the family is there with you, right?
Not yet, but they've been visiting. I think once the school year is done in June, they will then come. But so that's really important for me, that level of self-awareness, right? That there is a job to be done, focus on the job, don't get distracted. And then at the back of that, to realize that I've got to, protect the company, protect myself, protect the family at all times. Challenges. I think you did ask what challenges, early stages. Look, it's a demanding job, right? And there is a demand for my time, my attention all the time, right? And pacing myself to make sure that I'm not overexposing myself, but I'm just keeping up with the momentum as well. So not be disengaged, but also not overexpose myself, just do what's about right. And with this, it's important to actually have a support system around myself. So first and foremost for me, my family, like I'm speaking to my wife all the time, this is what I'm planning to do, what do you think? And then I've got colleagues at work, here, that I know that I bounce off ideas. And then externally, there is a big support system in terms of peer group. So for example, I'm part of the CEO Roundtable, and these are experienced and talented CEOs. Some have been here quite long, and you're able to bounce off things, and they say, no, that's noise, ignore it. No, that's important, pay attention to it, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, need to look after myself. So health-wise, make sure that at least I keep active and look after myself, because you could easily get consumed by this job and forget to look after myself. And yet this is the number one asset that I need to look after, which is me. Yeah.
Perfect. So now, when we're talking about you focusing on your job, for any business, the bottom line is what is important. Now, as you're still, trying to adjust to your new role and your outlook in terms of how Vodacom is going to perform in 2023, what do you promise your shareholders?
That's a loaded question. So I think there's in a role like this as a CEO, obviously protecting and growing shareholder value is of utmost importance, right? As Vodacom Tanzania, we are listed on the Dar Stock Exchange. We have not, in the last 2 years, paid dividends to the shareholders. So that is an important aspect that shareholders are definitely looking at. When do you start to pay dividends? So that's something that we're working on quite hard to make sure that we create value for shareholders and ultimately get to a point where we are able to return to dividend paying status. So that's the first thing. That's a big focus for us. Secondly, I did, I think in a different conversation also, where I was saying that I need to also be at the forefront of leading all-round stakeholder value creation for our customers. Customers want to work, to be part of a company that's socially responsible, a company that they can get value from, a company that's at the forefront of the industry in which we operate. So is our technology the best? Are we giving the best products? Are they getting the best value? And then a company that actually creates value for its employees, right? So are our employees engaged at Vodacom? Do they see this as a place where they can meet and match their ambitions? Do we create an environment that fosters innovation, collaboration? So those are sort of the key things that I need to be that I'm promising my shareholders, but beyond the shareholders, that I'm promising for me, all our stakeholders, that I need to champion stakeholder value creation all around, from shareholders, employees, and to our customers, and eventually to government, because the taxman wants money, and I need to continuously make sure that I create value by paying my dues.
Perfect. So in the telco industry, based on the data that's made available by the Tanzania Communications Regulatory Authority, Vodacom is a market leader. But then again, based on the recent statistics, your competitors are gaining on you. They're gaining ground. As the managing director of the company that's at the top, but then now again there's a lot of competition within the sector. How do you perceive that competition, and what's your strategy to ensure that Vodacom maintains its top-notch performance?
Yeah. So, firstly, one of the things that we are going to be very focused on and driving as Vodacom Tanzania is to be customer obsessed, like real customer obsession. It's a phrase I use, real customer obsession, and it's really about being customer first, right? And it's so for those that sort of follow some of the activities I've been doing in the last couple of months, you will see that I spend quite a lot of time in the marketplace, in the trade, in in our shops, in our call centers, meeting different stakeholders. I've been meeting corporate customers, and the whole idea behind this is to really understand what do our customers want versus what are we providing, and what do our trade partners want. That's the channel, distributors, the wakalas, the freelancers. All these are people that help us reach our customers. But if you're not creating value for them, they're not going to create value for customers, because they are our route to market. They are our last mile. So I've been having these engagements because I believe that I as an organization, we need to wear our customers' shoes so that we can understand what problems customers have and how we can solve those problems using our technology. When we go to market, we are providing value for customers. So I think for me, the first and most important thing is to make sure that we are customer first oriented. Then we can be competitive, because if we're not customer first and you're looking at the numbers only, it's very easy to lose ground in terms of what's important for the customer. Obviously, at the underlying or underpinning that is we need to make sure that our technology remains at the lead, right? So you will know that in September last year, we launched 5G, and then just off the tail of that, in October, early October, we had a successful spectrum auction, and we got additional spectrum, which has now allowed us to do quite a number of things. One, to be able to commercialize our 5G, and we do have over 200 5G sites at the moment, and we will be expanding more on those. What 5G then does is that it gives us an opportunity to actually provide high-speed internet for business customers, but also individual customers. So that's on 5G. But what's also the spectrum auction results, what also that has done for us is that we're able to modernize our existing network. So, our 4G network, we were congesting on capacity in some areas. Now we can see that with the new spectrum, we're able to open up new capacity and people get a better experience. Those are the things that will, keep us competitive. Make sure that we are providing quality for service. Make sure we are customer obsessed. Make sure that our technologies remains in the lead. And obviously, we need to make sure that the team here is fired up all the time to be in the lead. Yeah.
So now more on that 5G. As you say, Vodacom was the first telco in Tanzania to roll it out in the country. How has the performance been on the market and on the consumer base? Do you think that Tanzania has reached that level where you as a company can invest heavily in 5G and at the end of the day get the rewards? I mean, I'm sure that's not your key target, but then at the end of the day, is the market ready for 5G?
So, for me, yes, because ultimately the good thing with technology is that unlike many years ago and all the previous, revolutions, industrial revolution and all these things, right? Technology is one of those things where I believe Africa should not be left behind. So when it comes to the information revolution or the technology revolution, or call it the digital revolution, we should be able to keep up with the rest of the world. And 5G is one of those instances where we are able to keep up with the rest of the world. So yes, Tanzania is ready. And here is why I believe it's ready. One, that there is so many use cases for 5G that don't have to wait for the rest of the world to catch up. What do I mean by use cases? For example, today, TANESCO should be able to monitor all the meters that are on its network and do this remotely without having to send technicians to inspect at the premises. Just through smart metering, they should be able to tell that, you know, the meter at Philip's house is actually faulty or is running low on credit, and send you a notification so that you act, right? It shouldn't need for me to go and find that, oops, I'm out of electricity at the house, right? DAWASA should be able to install smart metering, should be able to install sensors along its pipelines and detect where they have leakages without having to send technicians there or having to wait for somebody to call, right? The street lights, the city, the Dar city should be able actually to monitor these remotely and not have to send technicians to drive and check everything. They should be able to tell that the street light at point X is out, and they should be able to tell, is it a connection issue, is it a battery issue, is it a light issue? So there's so many use cases. We launched it was Mkulima, which is really it was partly it's a platform to register farmers, but in that we can actually expand it and say, or we should be able to expand it and do things like smart irrigation, soil testing and monitoring, moisture management or moisture detection, and all these things. All these things are possible in the mines, right? The guys have got heavy equipment, underground in the mines. You can actually monitor all these things remotely and tell, okay, vehicle X that's in mine X in place Y is faulty, and what is at fault? It's this element. So all these things are possible. So that's on the industrial level, right? From a consumer point of view or individually, there is still a bit of time to go. One, because the devices, the handsets, are still very expensive for 5G, and it will take quite some time for those prices to drop. But we can see that prices are starting to come down. I mean, if you look at where the price points were, I remember when we launched 5G in South Africa a while back, they were very, very. Now we can see in most of the OEMs or the equipment manufacturers, that price points are starting to drop. That's a good thing. Secondly, let me call them high value customers, people that carry your Samsung A series, S series, your Apple devices. These devices only get switched on for 5G when you have 5G capability. Yeah. So they don't sort of automatically just lead with 5G just like they did with 4G. So today when you bring 4G devices, they will switch on automatically. With 5G, that's not been the case. But we're working very hard with both Apple, Samsung especially. I think that the iTels and so on, those are now trying to make it normal that the device comes 5G enabled. But we're working with those big two to make sure that we have 5G capability on devices. And I think in the very near future, we should have that available. Then consumers or the day-to-day person on the street with a 5G capable device will be able to get 5G service. And the speeds on these can vary from 500 Mbps to 1.2 Gbps. Yeah.
So in your opinion, what would it take for Tanzania to fully embrace or for 5G to be more practical within the Tanzanian infrastructure? What will it take?
So there's investment required for this, first and foremost, right? It is quite an expensive technology to get into. So on our part, obviously, working with government to try and see how do we, how can we co-create an environment that enables it, whether it's on duties, on on things like laying out of additional fiber, because 5G really demands capacity. It's about capacity, it's about speed. And if you want to really have good speed, you want the last mile to the site to be fiber and not microwave. So that's really important. A lot of investment within the fiber sort of infrastructure. Obviously, also we need to see that from a government point of view, that there is high adoption of technology, because a number of these things are successful also if the government embraces them, right? So if I go to a Muhimbili hospital, I want to be able to, they should be able to monitor all these things in their environment without having to send people walking around. But for that to happen, government would also need to be to embrace it as a key initiative, as a key strategic initiative on their side, that gets then integrated that gets integrated, for example, into the health sector, schools as well. I mean, these are areas where the school system should be able to, from an education point of view, how do we make sure that e-learning becomes a thing? Because now you can provide, high-speed internet to institutions, and they should be able to download education content and do massive experimentation in that space. Yeah.
So let's look at another service that Vodacom offers, M-Pesa, which is a key part of the company. Latest figures from last year, 2022, the transactions that were transacted, the mobile transactions in Tanzania, exorbitant in trillions of shillings. And now we know that you have the cross-cutting services, you've entered into banking, insurance through the M-Pesa. What is the strategy in terms of now to optimally use the mobile transactions to its full capacity, and moving forward, what do you see M-Pesa expanding into?
Yeah, so M-Pesa is a very, I think for me, I always say it's very iconic, it's very Tanzanian, right? And it's one of those things that the world should learn from Tanzania. Obviously, the guys next door will think otherwise. In Kenya, they also think but look, there's so many things we're doing here that are a first, and so many other people in the world should come to learn from here. But there's what I would call core services, which is where we started from, right? Transfer money, cashing it out, cashing it in, getting it into basically M-Pesa, right? That said, that on its own is not transformative. The real transformation is when people actually start to use M-Pesa as their day-to-day, for their day-to-day existence, right? Where you don't actually have to go to cash it out, right? Where you can actually literally pay for everything and anything within the ecosystem, and that's really the big opportunity. It's still expanding. You will see that now we've been very actively expanding our merchant base, which is the Lipa kwa M-Pesa proposition. So that's the one part, because we're trying to make sure that to encourage the money to remain within the ecosystem, so that people can, whether I'm going to a restaurant, a hospital, to buy a ticket, to buy at a supermarket, to buy for products, I actually never have to take money out, right? And the merchant that receives the money also uses it to buy wholesale on their side. That became the second journey. But now the third journey that we're busy with is that we've been busy with is lending. So there's a lot of lending opportunities, because traditionally, your traditional financial institutions lend a certain type of customer, right? The lady that is by the roadside, selling, cooking or frying those edibles in the morning, needs financial. She needs a financial support. Where can she borrow money from? The banks are likely not to lend her today. So that's that's the space we're playing in, right? And it's massive. It's really massive in terms of what the opportunities are. People want to get access to money so that they can start doing business. Tanzanians are very entrepreneurial. They want to start to do something, but they need money. They need working capital. They need cash. So really, that space is big and important. I think the fourth part that we will be exploring is sometimes they call it financial wealth, but it's more like it's almost like investment. So there's people that would want to invest in stocks, be it here or overseas. That will become an opportunity very soon for people to be able to do that. Then there is insurance, a lot of insurance. I mean, we're doing Vodacom, still very small, but there's also other types of insurance, whether it's health insurance and so on. But the opportunity here is usually for the underserved, right? Because, you and I are lucky to be able to get insurance listed through our employers and so on, right? Health insurance as an example. But the ordinary person on the street, without formal employment, struggles to get that kind of insurance and probably doesn't afford it. And the traditional insurance products are prohibitive. The barrier to entry is high because either the premiums are so high or the products are so complicated. So again, we're looking at very simple to use and affordable solutions in that space. So microinsurance is going to be a big part of this, and that's all part of M-Pesa. So I believe M-Pesa still has a lot to offer. I think I read a report somewhere where there is a 30 trillion lending gap in the SME segments in Tanzania. That's massive. So there's just enough room for everybody to play, but it's really making sure that we are adding value to that ecosystem, and that our solutions are simple enough to use, that they offer real value to our customers, and that they are transparent enough for users.
Perfect. So now when you talk about a cashless society, you talk about inclusivity, and then now you being able to help the SME ecosystem here in Tanzania, all these developments or prospects are contingent to the regulatory systems that are in place. We saw the sort of situation whereby the market was a bit challenged when the government raised levies for transacting online. So that's through bank and mobile as well. And then we looked at the impact that it had on financial inclusion, on the cashless society. So as a key market leader, what do you perhaps propose to be the way forward in order to avert some of these challenges that come into the market? Where do key sector players engage with the government in order to ensure that before a certain policy, before a certain regulatory is issued out there, how do you engage for a win-win situation?
Yeah, good question. So obviously, I mean, government had its objectives on why it was doing that, but I believe that it's had a very negative impact on the sector in that regard. We probably lost 1.5 years, close to 2 years, in terms of momentum of really growing financial inclusion in Tanzania. We have had, and I must say that government has been very open and welcoming of engagement to see how do we make sure that we have fit for growth policies that don't regress what has already been achieved. So, your question, I would say that I think continuous engagement is really important. Obviously, with this, there's a high level of responsibility and trust that needs to be cultivated on both sides. That actually, what we tell government in terms of what's likely to happen, they actually consider, and what government wants to achieve, we also consider on our side. So, it's a delicate space, right? Because you have to, government is always trying to raise money to really pay for the various services that government provides, right? On the other hand, we're trying to broaden the M-Pesa ecosystem as an example, M-Pesa user base, and we're now starting to get to to those customers that really don't have much disposable income. And if you put fees or taxes that are a deterrent to them adopting that, they easily step back. And I mean, I gave an example in one of the forums I attended with the Minister of Finance, where I said that using our own data, and I can imagine it must be the case for the other players, almost 1 million M-Pesa users stopped transacting on our side when these taxes were introduced. So, a tax that was meant to achieve one thing on government side, all of a sudden created a ripple effect on the other side. Now, what happens when such a scenario occurs? All the transactions that were previously digital for these 1 million people are no longer digital. They are no longer visible, they are no longer traceable. And we don't know where that money goes, nor does government. So I think it's in government's interest to try and support digitization and financial inclusion efforts, because it creates transparency for them in the financial, within the financial ecosystem. They can see where money goes, where money comes from. But also, the more people participate, the broader the taxable base becomes, because now you've got more and more people participating, as opposed to a sort of narrow population, right? And that's really been our pitch to government, to say, let us work all towards an effort of broadening the users within the financial space, within the digital space, because then we can do a lot more. The example I gave you of saying earlier on when I said keep the money within the ecosystem. Yeah. All of a sudden now it's digital, it's traceable. It's you can actually see where money is going, and you can actually see at what level to tax, because it's transparent. So that's really something that I believe we will need to work on quite incessantly with government. We have to keep on working with them on this. Yeah. Yeah.
So now let's talk about Elon Musk has his eyes set on Tanzania. So we understand for the past couple of weeks, Starlink has been a topic. Yes. The conversation, the possibility of the company setting shop in Tanzania as it is planning in other African countries. So based on the comments from the users, they say that they should come in because they will increase competition, and possibly, some of the traditional players, the likes of Vodacom, will be able to up their game in a certain way. So what is your view on that, the possibility of having such a global competitor entering the Tanzanian market?
So competition is always welcome, because competition gets the best out of all of us, right? If we are complacent in any way, that becomes really a kick on our backside to up our game, which I don't believe is the case. I mean, earlier on, you spoke about competition, and you were saying it's very tight and neck and neck. It's a competitive market. It's not a market without that's short of competition, right? But that said, Starlink is welcome to set up shop in Tanzania. I think my network director had an interview, I think, again with yourselves, where we said more than welcome. Why? Because it's an opportunity for to expand broadband coverage in Tanzania. Today, the country is at about just short of 60% penetration. The government, Mama Samia's government, has an ambition of getting to 85% by 2025. That's very ambitious under the current circumstances. Partly because with the traditional or current infrastructure investment approach, it's very expensive, it's very prohibitive. I have to go and put up a tower, I have to go put a roll fiber to that site. For me to set up a tower somewhere, you're talking about $120,000 per tower, right, as on average. Now, the more we have to expand and go out to rural areas, the more expensive actually it becomes. That $120,000 becomes even more expensive, because now you need to do roads to get to some of these sites. Sometimes there isn't grid power. You need to either start off with generators 24/7. We don't have industrial scale solar solutions yet. So even if you say, let me invest in solar, you still have to put heavy duty batteries to support the network at night. So by default, you end up having to start off with generators. So it's still very expensive to actually roll out infrastructure in this country. So the low orbit satellite technology that Starlink brings is an opportunity to really expand on broadband. But I think the big opportunity really for us as players is where we can collaborate, because there's areas there's areas where we have best practice, and there's areas where they have best practice. And I think the opportunity is to say, how do we collaborate and make sure that actually we're giving Tanzania the best possible service at the best value. So for me, I'm not fazed by it. I think competition is always welcome. Like I said at the start, there's just a lot to be done in Tanzania that it cannot be solved by just one entity.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about numbers. What are the key revenue generators for Vodacom at the moment, and do you see any of the figures changing in the future? Because we understand that the market is evolving, the business is evolving as well. Now you're talking about, the mobile transaction, because back in the days it was a voice and then data, but then now we're talking about a whole different future. What are the key revenue generators at the moment, and what does the future look like?
So telecom operators worldwide tend to follow the same sort of curve, right? So if you look at core GSM services, it starts off with voice, and then data kicks in. And when data kicks in, voice starts to go down, and that's usually been the case in many markets. And then you get into other business areas, right? So in our instance, we are financial services, or the fintech. Then you've got enterprise, then you've got wholesale, right? Now, if I'm to look at where we are, Tanzania, we still have, so data is growing, and it's the fastest growing for us, right? But we still have quite a high voice usage on our network. This is one country where people love to talk. I mean, people are using more than 200 minutes a month. That is so high. When I compare that with South Africa, it was under 100 minutes. So people in Tanzania are still talking a lot, right? Maybe it also talks about the cost. It's very cheap. But yeah, there is a lot of voice still going on. There's also a lot of data being used in Tanzania. So it's a very interesting duality, whereby what we see, so when I was in South Africa, data was almost 60% usage, and voice in the low 40s. Here, you're still almost at a 50-50. So voice still has a key role to play. Then digital services have started to emerge. So you've got, content, be it things like music, entertainment through, movies, education content, and so on. That's a space that is still growing. It's still small, but I think it's massive, because if we can actually invest in that big time, it's got a lot of opportunity, and it talks directly to the opportunity around digitizing Tanzania. So that's a space that will continue to grow, but it's still very small. Then there's M-Pesa today, financial services. So that for us, so if I look at the shape of you asked our revenue, I would say it's close to 35 and above % of contribution to the total business. So it's a massive opportunity and still growing, but a big contributor to our space. Now, as telcos mature, what you start to see is the wholesale space also becoming big. So wholesale is where we share infrastructure and you monetize that. So instead of building a tower and I sit on it alone, I bring the other operators to share with me, and that becomes a revenue stream. In some areas where it doesn't make sense, instead of me going to roll out network, I go and roam on their network. So they basically give me space on their network and I pay them. So those are wholesale services that will continue to also grow. They're not so big here yet, but that's we do have instances where we've started actually to see moving in that direction, or wholesale fiber, like what we're doing with NITCCB, We do share capacity with TTCL. We do share capacity with the government. So that's the wholesale space, but it's still small relative to what the opportunity could be.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up, we understand that Vodacom has a plan or strategy to transform lives through technology. You have, such initiatives as the Vodacom Digital Accelerator, where you work with, young innovators. I want to get a sense of your vision for technology and how it intertwines with the services that you offer, but also how do you enable young Tanzanian innovators maximize their potential in that space?
So that's a very good question because it's a passion point for me. I believe that as a corporate citizen, that's how we create social impact. That's how we create transformation in the country, and that's how we become a legacy organization. A couple of things. One, obviously, what we're actively doing and participating in. At a very young age, we have a Code Like a Girl program, where we're taking so many young girls, and these are preteen girls, and giving them their first chance at technology. They learn how to write code, they learn how to develop websites. It's amazing when you see these young girls and how their eyes light up when they do the first website prototype. I remember I was at a school in Dodoma where we handed over a computer lab, and these girls were showing us some of their websites that they had developed, like really young girls, and it was amazing to see. So for me, very passionate about that, and that's something we will continue to do quite actively. And actually, within that space, we do have our schools connectivity program, if I may call it that, and where we roll out ICT laboratories in schools. And as part of that, what we call our Ifahamu platform, we provide the schools with an education content platform. And this here, you've got lesson plans, you've got school textbooks, articles, like a lot of things that you would ordinarily have to go to a library to find or to search separately. But the good thing is that they are curated for schools, right? So it's almost like having your library online, right? In fact, even for those that don't have laboratories, you actually can find videos of experiments being conducted. So, ideally you'd want the child to be able to go through the experiment, but if they don't have all the other equipment required for the experiment, at least they can see how it's being done. So that's still part of our education, right? Then we've got the Digital Accelerator program that we do with the Smart Lab folks. And the exciting thing about this is that this is really supporting startups that are in this whole tech space, right? And they go through a whole series of programs to help them scale their startups and make them ready for funding. So we're just making them investment ready. So, what should be the structure of your startup? What capability should you have in place so that when funders come and they're looking at companies, because remember the way the angel investors work, you pitch. And they want to see which company is best organized, which startup is best organized, which startup has the right processes in place, which startup has the right idea in place. So we work with Smart Lab, and I think we've done 2 seasons. We're in season 2, if I'm not mistaken. And these are young, very smart individuals that have set up these companies and most of these companies are actually solving real human problems, but with technology. Some are fintech, health, business, agriculture, education. There's lots of, it's amazing when you listen to the ideas that these young people have out there. And one of the challenges that I've put across to the team that organizes this is that I actually want us to start a women's league within that, like just women startups alone, because we need to be intentional about actually getting women tech entrepreneurs in Tanzania. And I want Vodacom to actually be the incubator for these entities. So that's in that regard. Now, beyond that, obviously, you are aware of our flagship foundation initiative, M-Mama.
Yeah,
Again, we're using technology for good in that space. We think we've launched in 5 or 6 districts at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. And we're using technology to help women, expectant mothers that are really in need of help. I don't know if you know how it works, but a mother in an outlying area, expectant mother, gets a complication, she'll call a short code 115. That short code is only available where the program has been activated. When it gets into the call center 115, a dispatcher will then do preliminary questions and to determine the severity of the case that the expectant mother is experiencing. And depending on the severity, they're directed either to a community health center or to a referral hospital. But the interesting part here is that the dispatch center will then dispatch an ambulance. In the absence of ambulances, there is community drivers that have been trained to actually assist do this. So they will call out that driver, go to place X, there's an expectant mother in this condition, drive her to a hospital or to a community center. And in so doing, really, you avert crisis because these are mothers in their 3rd trimester really getting to a point where it's getting complicated. So there is quite a lot we've done. I mean, there's other health initiatives that we've been a part of. So I think for me, there's 2 things here. There's using technology for commercial, consumer, enterprise benefit, but there's also, I think the most exciting part is when you actually use technology for good, when you use technology to really make a difference in people's lives. And those are some of the things that I think are quite exciting at this point.
Okay, so in conclusion, Mr. Philip, what is your vision for Vodacom?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my vision is for Vodacom Tanzania to be a sustainable business that creates all-round value for its stakeholders. And what do I mean? Value for our customers, whether be it them using our services directly or indirectly, like the examples I just spoke about, our community involvement, that those things should actually be what we stand for. Those should be the things that actually people identify us with. But to do that, we have to then keep on creating shareholder value. And creating shareholder value is like, we've got to continue growing the business. We've got to make sure that we employ and retain the best in the country so that they can help us deliver on this value. But most importantly, for me, my vision is for us to be a customer-obsessed organization, customer first. I do go to the trade, to the market, like I said earlier on, quite often. And it's really to demonstrate to the rest of the organization that it's important that we continuously have our ear on the ground, that we're continuously living in the shoes of our customers to understand what problem we need to be solving and how we need to solve it, because that's the only way to create sustainable value and sustainable growth in Tanzania for our shareholders.
Perfect. The future is quite exciting. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We've got to know a lot more about Vodacom. Until next time.
Thank you so much. Great.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.